The explosion shattered the morning calm like thunder breaking through a peaceful dream. Maya Rodriguez felt the ground beneath her feet tremble as debris rained down from the marketplace ceiling. Dust filled the air so thick she could barely see her own hands. The screaming started immediately after the ringing in her ears subsided. She had been buying vegetables for her small restaurant when the bomb went off. Now chaos surrounded her on every side. People ran in all directions, some crying, others shouting for help. Maya stood frozen for only a moment before her training kicked in. Years of studying combat medicine in secret had prepared her for moments like this, even though she never expected to use those skills in her quiet neighborhood. Moving through the smoke and debris, Maya began helping the injured. She found an elderly man trapped under a fallen beam, his leg clearly broken. Without hesitation, she used her scarf to create a makeshift tourniquet, speaking softly to keep him calm while she worked. Her hands moved with surprising precision as she stabilized his injury. "Stay with me," she whispered in her native Spanish, then repeated it in English. "Help is coming." Next, she discovered a young mother holding her crying infant. The woman had a deep gash across her forehead, blood streaming down her face. Maya quickly tore strips from her shirt to create bandages, applying pressure to stop the bleeding while showing the mother how to hold the cloth properly. As she moved from victim to victim, Maya's movements became more fluid and confident. She had studied these techniques from medical textbooks she bought with money saved from her restaurant tips. Every night after closing, she would practice on mannequins she made from old clothes and newspaper. Her brother had laughed at her dedication, calling it a waste of time for a woman who cooked food for a living. But Maya had always felt drawn to healing. As a child, she would bandage her dolls and pretend to be a doctor. Her family encouraged her cooking instead, saying it was more practical for a girl from their neighborhood. Medicine required expensive education they couldn't afford, so she learned to cook professionally while teaching herself medical skills in private. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. Military personnel began arriving at the scene, their boots heavy against the broken concrete. Maya continued working, barely noticing the armed soldiers establishing a perimeter around the destroyed marketplace. She was kneeling beside a teenage boy who had been hit by flying glass when she felt someone watching her. The boy's wounds were serious but not life-threatening. Maya had cleaned the cuts and was carefully removing glass fragments when a shadow fell across her work area. "Where did you learn to do that?" a deep voice asked from above. Maya looked up to see a tall man in military fatigues standing over her. His uniform indicated he was American military, and the medical bag slung across his shoulder suggested he was a medic. His eyes were studying her hands as she worked, taking in every detail of her technique. "I taught myself," Maya replied simply, returning her attention to the injured boy. She didn't want to explain her unconventional education to a stranger, especially not a soldier. The medic knelt down beside her, setting his bag on the ground. He watched silently as Maya finished treating the boy's wounds. Her movements were careful and efficient, showing knowledge that typically took years of formal training to develop. "What's your name?" he asked as they both helped the boy sit up against a piece of rubble. "Maya," she answered, already looking around for the next person who needed help. "I'm Jack Morrison," he said. "I'm a Navy SEAL medic. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I have to say your technique is impressive." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks but didn't respond to the compliment. She had spotted an older woman sitting alone, rocking back and forth while holding her arm at an odd angle. Clearly a broken bone that needed immediate attention. Jack followed her gaze and nodded. Together they moved toward the woman. As they walked, Jack noticed how Maya assessed each victim they passed, quickly determining who needed help most urgently. This kind of triage thinking usually only came with extensive training and experience. "Ma'am, we're here to help," Maya said gently as they reached the woman. She spoke in Spanish first, then English. Noticing the woman's confused expression, the woman responded in rapid Spanish, explaining through tears that she couldn't move her arm and was afraid it was broken. Maya translated for Jack while beginning her examination of the injury. "Definitely broken," Jack confirmed after his own assessment. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" Maya nodded as she helped Jack immobilize the arm using supplies from his medical kit. Their hands worked together seamlessly, as if they had been a team for years rather than strangers who had met minutes ago. More military personnel arrived, including additional medics. Jack called them over to take charge of the woman with the broken arm, then turned back to Maya. You're not just someone who taught herself basic first aid, he observed. Your knowledge goes much deeper than that. How is that possible? Maya hesitated. She had spent years hiding her medical studies from most people in her community. Some would think it was inappropriate for a restaurant worker to have such ambitions. Others might worry she was trying to rise above her station in life. I study at night, she finally admitted. Medical textbooks, anatomy, emergency procedures. I practice whenever I can. Why? Jack asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Maya looked around at the devastation surrounding them. People were still being carried away on stretchers. The smell of smoke and dust hung heavy in the air. This kind of violence had become too common in her city over the past few years. Because someone needs to know how to help, she said simply, and maybe that someone is me. Jack studied her face for a long moment. He had served in combat zones around the world and had worked alongside many skilled medics. But there was something different about Maya. Her composure under pressure, her natural instinct for helping others, and her obvious dedication to learning suggested she possessed qualities that couldn't be taught in any classroom. Maya, he said carefully, I think you and I need to talk. 3 hours later, Maya sat across from Jack Morrison in a small cafe that had escaped damage from the bombing. Her hands still trembled slightly as she wrapped them around a cup of coffee, the adrenaline from the morning's events slowly wearing off. Jack had insisted on buying her lunch after they finished helping at the scene, claiming he wanted to thank her for her assistance. You saved at least 4 lives today, Jack said, stirring sugar into his own coffee. That elderly man with the crushed leg told me you got to him first. The tourniquet you applied prevented him from bleeding out. Maya shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Jack said firmly. Not anyone. Most people would have panicked or run away. You ran toward the danger and started helping immediately. That takes a special kind of person. Through the cafe window, they could see cleanup crews working to clear debris from the marketplace. The bombing had been the 3rd one in their city this month, part of an ongoing conflict between government forces and rebel groups. Maya had grown up with this violence as a constant backdrop to daily life. Tell me about your medical training, Jack said, leaning forward. And don't say you just read a few books. I saw how you handled that compound fracture on the teenage boy. You knew exactly how to realign the bone and immobilize it. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from casual reading. Maya took a long sip of her coffee before answering. She had never told anyone the full extent of her self-education, not even her family. When I was 16, my younger sister was in a car accident, she began slowly. She was bleeding badly and we couldn't get to a hospital fast enough because of fighting in the streets. I watched her die because none of us knew how to help her. Jack's expression softened. I'm sorry. After that, I decided I never wanted to feel that helpless again. I started buying medical textbooks with money I earned working in restaurants. I would study every night after my shifts, learning about anatomy, trauma care, surgical procedures. That must have been expensive, Jack observed. Very expensive. Sometimes I had to choose between buying food and buying books. But I kept thinking about Maria, my sister, and how she might still be alive if someone had known what to do. Maya paused, remembering those early days of studying by candlelight in her small apartment. Her neighbors thought she was crazy for spending her earnings on books instead of clothes or entertainment like other young women her age. I found a nursing school that would let me observe classes if I cleaned their classrooms for free, she continued. The instructors didn't know I was there most of the time. I would sit in the back and take notes on everything they taught. For how long? Jack asked. 4 years. I also volunteered at a free clinic in the poorest part of the city. The doctor there eventually realized I knew more than most of his paid assistants. He started letting me help with minor procedures. Jack shook his head in amazement. Maya, you essentially put yourself through medical school without anyone knowing. It wasn't real medical school, Maya protested. I never got any certificates or degrees. I'm just a restaurant cook who reads medical books. The people you helped today would disagree with that assessment. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and frowned. My brother, she explained. He heard about the bombing and wants to make sure I'm okay. Are you close with your family? Jack asked. Yes, but they don't really understand my interest in medicine. They think I should focus on expanding my restaurant business instead of wasting time on impossible dreams. Impossible dreams? Maya gestured around the cafe, then toward the bombed marketplace visible through the window. Look around, Jack. I live in a war zone. Women from my background don't become doctors or medics. We cook food, clean houses, raise children. My family loves me, but they think I'm being unrealistic. Jack was quiet for several minutes, studying Maya's face. She could see him thinking, weighing something in his mind. What if I told you there was a way to make your dreams realistic? He said finally. What do you mean? The military has programs for people with your skills and dedication. Special training opportunities for individuals who show exceptional ability in combat medicine. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not a soldier, Jack. I'm a cook from a poor neighborhood who happens to know some medical procedures. You're much more than that, and I think you know it. Today I watched you perform triage in a disaster zone like someone with years of combat experience. You kept calm under pressure, made quick decisions that saved lives, and worked effectively with limited resources. Those are exactly the qualities we look for in military medics. We? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm part of a special operations unit that sometimes recruits unconventional candidates, people who have unique skills or backgrounds that could be valuable in certain situations. Maya set down her coffee cup and leaned back in her chair. You're recruiting me? I'm suggesting that you consider options you might not have known existed. There are training programs that could help you develop your medical skills further, while also teaching you other valuable abilities. Like what? Combat medicine, advanced trauma surgery, emergency response in hostile environments, skills that could help you save even more lives. Maya thought about the chaos of the morning, the helplessness she had felt despite all her years of study. Even with her knowledge, she had been limited by lack of proper equipment and advanced training. Where would this training happen? She asked. That would depend on which program you qualified for. Some take place in the United States, others in various locations around the world. I would have to leave my family. My restaurant? Temporarily, yes. But you would come back with abilities that could help protect them and your community. Maya stared out the window at the destruction in the marketplace. Despite all her preparation and study, today had shown her how much more she still had to learn. The medical knowledge she had gained through books and observation had helped, but she knew it wasn't enough for the level of trauma she encountered regularly in her city. Why me? She asked. You must know dozens of trained medics who would be interested in special operations work. Because you have something that can't be taught, Jack replied. You have the heart of a healer combined with the courage of a warrior. Today proved that, and your unconventional background might be exactly what certain missions require. What kind of missions? Jack hesitated. I can't give you details without clearance, but let's say there are situations where having someone who looks like a local civilian but has advanced medical and tactical training could save many lives. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand what Jack was really suggesting. You want me to become some kind of undercover medic? I want you to become the best version of yourself, Jack said. Someone who can help people not just when disasters happen randomly, but when you can prevent disasters from happening at all. 2 weeks passed before Maya saw Jack Morrison again. She had thought about their conversation every day, turning his proposal over in her mind like a puzzle she couldn't solve. The idea of leaving everything she knew terrified her, but so did the thought of spending the rest of her life feeling powerless to help when violence struck her community. During those 2 weeks, 3 more bombings had occurred in nearby neighborhoods. Each time Maya rushed to help the victims, and each time she felt the same frustration at the limitations of her knowledge and resources. She had saved lives, but she had also watched people die from injuries that proper medical equipment and advanced training might have prevented. Jack appeared at her restaurant on a Tuesday evening just as she was closing. The small establishment was empty except for Maya, who was cleaning tables and preparing for the next day. She looked up when the bell above the door chimed and saw him standing in the entrance, still wearing military fatigues but looking less formal than he had at the cafe. I was hoping we could continue our conversation, he said simply. Maya nodded toward a table in the corner. Would you like some coffee? I was about to make a pot anyway. That would be great, thank you. As Maya prepared the coffee, Jack looked around the restaurant. It was small but well maintained, with cheerful yellow walls decorated with photographs of local landmarks. The kitchen was visible through a service window, spotlessly clean and organized with professional efficiency. You built this yourself? Jack asked when Maya returned with 2 cups. My family helped, but yes. I started with a food cart 5 years ago and saved enough money to rent this space. It's not much, but it's mine. It's impressive. Running a restaurant while teaching yourself advanced medicine couldn't have been easy. Maya shrugged. When you want something badly enough, you find a way to make time for it. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Jack pulled a manila envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table between them. "I've been authorized to make you a formal offer," he said. "But before you look at these documents, I want you to understand what you would be committing to." Maya stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Tell me." "The training program lasts 18 months. The first 6 months would be basic military preparation, physical conditioning, weapons training, tactical skills. You would learn how to defend yourself and others in combat situations." "I've never even held a gun," Maya said quietly. "That's actually an advantage. We won't have to break any bad habits." The next 6 months would focus on advanced medical training, trauma surgery, field medicine, emergency procedures that go far beyond what you've taught yourself. And the final 6 months? Specialized training for covert operations. You would learn how to blend into different environments, gather intelligence, and provide medical support in hostile territory without revealing your true capabilities. Maya felt her heart racing. The scope of what Jack was describing seemed overwhelming, but also exciting in a way that surprised her. After the training, what happens then? You would be assigned to a special operations unit. Sometimes you might work in your home country. Other times you could be deployed anywhere in the world where your specific skills are needed. "What specific skills?" Jack leaned forward. "Maya, there are situations where traditional military medics can't operate effectively. Places where we need someone who can provide advanced medical care while appearing to be a civilian. Your background, your appearance, your language skills, all of that makes you valuable for certain types of missions." "Dangerous missions?" "Yes," Jack said honestly. "Very dangerous. I won't lie to you about that. But you would be extensively trained to handle those dangers, and you would never work alone." Maya picked up the envelope and held it without opening it. "My family would never understand. They would think I was abandoning them." "Would you be abandoning them? Or would you be learning skills that could help protect them and thousands of other people?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "I keep thinking about my sister Maria, about how she died because nobody knew how to help her. Then I think about all the other sisters and brothers and parents who die in these bombings and attacks. Maybe I could learn to help more of them." "The training would change you," Jack warned. "You would come back as a different person, stronger, more capable, but also carrying knowledge and experiences that might be difficult to process." "Change how?" "You would know how to kill as well as how to heal. You would see things and do things that most people never have to face. That kind of knowledge comes with a psychological cost." Maya thought about the violence she witnessed regularly in her city, the bombed marketplaces and terrorized civilians. She was already carrying psychological costs from living in a war zone. "Would I be able to come home?" "Eventually, yes. After your initial service commitment, you could choose to return here permanently, and the skills you learned would stay with you forever." "How long is the service commitment?" 5 years after training." "But Maya, I need you to understand something important. Once you know what you would know, once you've seen what you would see, you might not want to come back to this quiet life." Maya opened the envelope and pulled out several official-looking documents. The first was an application for a program called Advanced Combat Medical Specialist Training. The second was a background check authorization form. The third was a contract outlining terms of service. "I would have to leave in 30 days, she asked, scanning the timeline. "If you're accepted, yes. The next training cycle begins in 5 weeks. Maya set the papers down and looked around her restaurant again. She thought about her regular customers, the elderly man who came for soup every Wednesday, the young mother who brought her children for lunch on weekends. She thought about her brother, who had helped her paint these walls and install the kitchen equipment. "Can I have time to think about it?" "Of course. But Maya, I need an answer within 1 week. These opportunities don't come along often." After Jack left, Maya sat alone in her restaurant for another hour, staring at the documents. The photographs on the walls seemed to be looking down at her, reminders of the life she had built and the community she served. But she also thought about the explosion 2 weeks ago, about the helplessness she had felt despite all her years of studying. She thought about Maria, about the countless other victims of violence who might be saved with better medical care and more effective intervention. When she finally locked up the restaurant and walked home through the quiet streets, Maya realized she had already made her decision. She just needed to find the courage to follow through with it. The next morning, she would start the process of telling her family that their lives were about to change in ways none of them could imagine. Maya's brother Carlos threw the military recruitment papers across the kitchen table, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. The documents scattered like fallen leaves, some sliding onto the floor of their family home where 3 generations had gathered for their weekly Sunday dinner. "This is insane, Maya," Carlos said, his voice rising. "You want to throw away everything we've built to become a soldier? To kill people?" "To save people," Maya corrected quietly, but her brother wasn't listening. Their mother, Elena, sat in stunned silence, clutching her rosary beads. Their father, Roberto, stared at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. The extended family members who had come for dinner, aunts, uncles, cousins, whispered among themselves in rapid Spanish. "Mija," their father said finally, using the pet name he had called Maya since childhood. "This is not the life we wanted for you. We supported your medical studies because healing is a noble calling. But this is something else entirely." Maya had practiced this conversation in her mind dozens of times over the past 3 days, but facing her family's shock and disappointment was harder than she had anticipated. "Papa, remember when you used to tell me stories about Grandpa fighting in the revolution? You said he fought because someone had to stand up for people who couldn't protect themselves." "That was different," Roberto replied. "He was fighting for his own country, his own people. This American wants to take you away to fight in foreign wars." "Every war is a foreign war until it comes to your neighborhood," Maya said. "The bombs that killed Maria, the violence that destroys our marketplace every few weeks, that's all connected to bigger conflicts. Maybe I can learn to help stop some of it." Carlos picked up one of the scattered papers and read from it. "Advanced Combat Medical Specialist Training." "Listen to yourself, Maya. You're talking about becoming some kind of spy or assassin." "I'm talking about becoming a better healer," Maya shot back. "Do you think I enjoyed watching people die in that marketplace because I didn't have the right training or equipment? Do you think I like feeling helpless every time violence comes to our community?" Her Aunt Rosa, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Maya, dear, there are other ways to get better medical training. You could apply to nursing school, or save money for medical school. Why does it have to be with the military?" Maya took a deep breath, trying to find words that would help them understand. "Because traditional medical school would take 8 years and cost more money than our family will see in a lifetime. This training would be complete in 18 months, and afterward I would have skills that could actually make a difference." "Skills like what?" her mother asked, speaking for the first time since Maya had explained Jack's offer. "Advanced trauma surgery, emergency medicine, the ability to help people in disaster zones and conflict areas. Mama, I would learn to save lives that other doctors couldn't save." "And you would learn to take lives too," Carlos said bitterly. "Don't pretend this is just about medicine, Maya. They want to turn you into a weapon." Maya felt tears stinging her eyes, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Maybe learning to defend people is part of learning to protect them. Maybe sometimes the only way to save lives is to stop the people who are trying to end them." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Elena's rosary beads clicking together as she prayed under her breath. Maya looked around the table at the faces of the people she loved most in the world, seeing disappointment and fear reflected in their eyes. "There's something else," Maya said quietly. "The training comes with a signing bonus. Enough money to expand the restaurant, to buy the building instead of renting it. Enough to send Carlos's kids to college." "We don't want blood money," Carlos said immediately. "It's not blood money. It's payment for service, just like any other job. And it would ensure that our family is financially secure for the first time in our lives." Roberto leaned forward, his weathered hands clasped together. "Maya, what happens if you don't come back? What happens if this training changes you so much that you're not our Maya anymore?" The question hit her like a physical blow because she had been asking herself the same thing. Jack had warned her that the training would change her, but she couldn't know how much until it was too late to turn back. "I don't know, Papa," she admitted. "But I know that staying here and doing nothing will definitely change me. Every time I watch someone die because I don't have the skills to save them, I become a little more helpless, a little more bitter." "Is that better?" Her cousin Sophia, who was about Maya's age, reached across the table and took her hand. "Maya, I understand why you want to do this. But why does it have to be you? Why can't someone else learn these skills? Because I'm the one who's here and I'm the one who's ready, Maya replied. And maybe I'm the one who's meant to do this. The conversation continued for another 2 hours, with family members taking turns trying to convince Maya to reconsider. They offered alternative plans, pooling money to send her to nursing school, asking church connections to help her find medical training opportunities, even suggesting she move to the United States as a regular immigrant rather than a military recruit. But Maya had made her decision. The more her family argued against it, the more certain she became that she was choosing the right path. She could see that their opposition came from love and fear, but she could also see that they didn't understand the burning drive inside her to become more than just a witness to tragedy. As the evening wound down and family members began leaving, Carlos pulled Maya aside for a private conversation on the front porch of their parents' house. Maya, I'm scared, he said, his anger replaced by worry. I'm scared that my sister is going to disappear and some kind of soldier is going to come back in her place. Maya hugged him tightly. I'm scared too, Carlos. But I'm also excited. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm moving towards something instead of just surviving each day. Promise me something, Carlos said. Promise me that no matter what they teach you, no matter how much you change, you'll remember who you were before. Remember that you're Maya Rodriguez from the neighborhood restaurant, not some government operative. I promise, Maya said, though she wondered if it was a promise she would be able to keep. And promise me you'll come back. I promise that too. As Maya walked home through the familiar streets, she realized that this might be one of the last times she would see her neighborhood through the eyes of the person she had always been. In 3 weeks, she would leave for training that would transform her into someone new. She stopped at the marketplace where she had helped bombing victims just a month ago. The area had been rebuilt, but she could still see scorch marks on some of the walls. Tomorrow, she would submit her acceptance papers to Jack Morrison and begin the process of becoming someone capable of preventing scenes like this, rather than just responding to them. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The military training facility was nothing like Maya had imagined. Instead of the sterile buildings and rigid formations she expected, the compound looked more like a university campus mixed with an outdoor adventure center. Maya stepped off the transport bus with 12 other recruits, her single duffel bag feeling impossibly light for an 18-month journey. Jack Morrison was waiting for them at the entrance, looking every bit the professional soldier in his crisp uniform. But when he saw Maya, his serious expression softened into something that might have been pride. Welcome to Phase 1, he said to the group. For the next 6 months, this place will be your home, your school, and your testing ground. Some of you will complete the program and move on to advanced training. Others will discover that this path isn't right for them. Both outcomes are perfectly acceptable. Maya looked around at her fellow recruits. There were 8 men and 4 women, ranging in age from early 20s to late 30s. They came from different countries and backgrounds. She could hear accents suggesting origins in Eastern Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia. Whatever this program was, it clearly drew candidates from around the world. Rodriguez, Jack called out, consulting a clipboard. You're in Barracks C, Bunk 14. Orientation begins at 600 tomorrow. Get some rest, you're going to need it. The barracks were simple but comfortable, with individual sleeping areas and shared common spaces. Maya's bunkmate turned out to be a woman named Anya from Ukraine, who spoke excellent English and had apparently been a paramedic before joining the program. What brought you here? Anya asked as they unpacked their belongings. I want to learn to save more lives, Maya replied simply. Anya smiled. Good answer. The instructors like recruits who focus on the mission rather than the adventure. That first night, Maya lay awake listening to the sounds of the other recruits settling in around her. Through the window, she could see lights from other buildings across the compound. Somewhere out there, advanced trainees were probably learning the specialized skills that would define their futures. In 18 months, if she succeeded, she would be one of them. The next morning began with a 5 a.m. wake-up call that had the entire barracks moving with military precision. Maya had never been in such a structured environment, but she found the routine comforting rather than oppressive. After a quick breakfast, the recruits assembled in a classroom where their lead instructor, Sergeant Major Patricia Williams, outlined what lay ahead. For the next 26 weeks, you will learn basic military skills, physical conditioning, weapons training, And tactical thinking, Williams announced. But this is not a traditional military program. We're not training you to be infantry soldiers or even conventional special forces. We're training you to be something more specialized. She clicked a remote control, and a presentation appeared on the wall screen. Advanced combat medical specialists work in environments where traditional military medics cannot operate effectively. You might be deployed as humanitarian aid workers, Peace Corps volunteers, journalists, or business travelers. Your real mission will be to provide medical support and intelligence gathering in hostile territories. Maya felt a chill of excitement. This was exactly what she had hoped for. A chance to help people while working to prevent larger conflicts. The training is designed to be challenging, Williams continued. We will push you to your physical and mental limits. Some of you will quit. Some of you will be asked to leave. That's normal and expected. This program isn't for everyone. The first weeks were the hardest of Maya's life. Physical training began before dawn and continued until evening. She learned to run longer distances than she had ever imagined possible, to climb walls and obstacles, to move silently through difficult terrain. Her hands, soft from years of cooking, developed calluses from rope climbing and weapons handling. The weapons training was particularly challenging for Maya, who had never held a gun before arriving at the facility. Her instructor, a patient corporal named Davis, worked with her individually to overcome her initial fear and hesitation. It's not about wanting to hurt people, Davis explained as Maya struggled with target practice. It's about having the tools to protect people when words and medicine aren't enough. Gradually, Maya began to understand that the weapons were simply another type of medical instrument, tools that could be used to preserve life by stopping those who would end it. This mental shift helped her overcome her reluctance and develop respectable marksmanship skills. The academic portion of training covered subjects Maya had never considered. She learned about international politics, intelligence gathering, cultural sensitivity, and language skills. The medical training built on her self-taught knowledge but took it to levels she hadn't known existed. Forget everything you think you know about trauma medicine, Dr. Sarah Chen announced on the first day of advanced medical training. In conventional hospitals, you have backup, equipment, and time. In the field, you might have none of those things. You need to learn to save lives with whatever resources are available. Maya thrived in these sessions. Her years of self-study had given her a solid foundation, and her experience helping bombing victims had taught her to work under pressure. But the military medical training went far beyond anything she had encountered. She learned to perform surgery with improvised tools, to treat gunshot wounds and blast injuries, to manage medical emergencies in austere environments. More importantly, she learned to make life and death decisions quickly and confidently. Rodriguez shows exceptional promise, Dr. Chen noted in Maya's evaluation after 8 weeks of training. Her unconventional background actually works in her favor. She doesn't have traditional medical training to unlearn, so she adapts more quickly to field medicine protocols. But the psychological training was perhaps the most challenging aspect of the program. Maya learned about the mental toll of working in high-stress environments, about maintaining cover identities under pressure, about compartmentalizing emotions to function effectively during operations. Your greatest asset will be your ability to remain calm and focused, regardless of circumstances, explained Dr. Michael Torres, the program's psychological consultant. But that skill comes with a cost. You will see and do things that civilian medics never face. You need coping strategies that allow you to process those experiences without losing your effectiveness or your humanity. During these sessions, Maya often thought about her family's concerns. Would this training change her so much that she would lose touch with the person she had been? Would she return home as a stranger to the people who loved her? 3 months into the program, Maya received her first letter from home. Carlos had written to tell her about developments in their neighborhood, 2 more bombings, several families displaced by violence, and the continued struggle to rebuild damaged areas. I'm starting to understand why you left, Carlos wrote. Every time something like this happens, I think about how helpless we all feel. Maybe learning to do something about it is better than just accepting it as normal. Maya folded the letter carefully and put it in her footlocker next to the photograph of her family. She was changing, just as Jack had warned her she would, but she was also becoming stronger, more capable, and more confident in her ability to make a difference. As Phase 1 training neared its end, Maya realized that she was no longer the restaurant owner who had stumbled into a bombing scene. She was becoming something new, a person capable of walking into dangerous situations and making them safer through skill, preparation, and determination. The real test would come in Phase 2, when she would learn the specialized skills that would define her future missions. But for now, Maya was proud of how far she had come and excited about how much further she could go. 6 months into her training, Maya stood in an operating room that had been designed to simulate the worst possible conditions. The lights flickered intermittently, simulating unreliable power. The sound system played recordings of gunfire and explosions. Her patient was a realistic mannequin with multiple traumatic injuries that would challenge even experienced surgeons in a fully equipped hospital. "Dr. Rodriguez," the instructor called out, using the title that still felt strange to Maya's ears. "Your patient has been shot 3 times and caught in a blast. You have limited supplies and no backup. You have 20 minutes to stabilize him for transport. Begin." Maya's hands moved with confidence that would have amazed her 6 months earlier. She assessed the wounds quickly, prioritized treatments, and began working with the focused intensity she had developed through months of increasingly difficult scenarios. The noise and chaos that would have distracted her before now faded into background as she concentrated completely on saving a life. Phase 2. Training had transformed her understanding of what was possible in field medicine. She had learned to perform complex surgical procedures in tents, abandoned buildings, and moving vehicles. She could now treat injuries that would have seemed hopeless when she was teaching herself from textbooks in her restaurant. But more than the technical skills, Phase 2 had taught Maya about resilience and adaptability. She had learned to function effectively under extreme stress, to maintain her medical expertise even when afraid, hungry, or exhausted. The instructors had pushed her to discover reserves of strength and determination she hadn't known she possessed. "Time," the instructor announced. Maya stepped back from her patient, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool temperature in the simulation room. "Excellent work, Rodriguez. Your patient would have survived and made a full recovery. You're ready for Phase 3. Phase 3 was different from anything Maya had experienced in her first year of training. Instead of working with other recruits in controlled environments, she was assigned to work individually with specialized instructors who prepared her for the covert aspects of her future missions. "From now on, you're not just a medic," explained Agent Sarah Martinez during Maya's first Phase 3 briefing. "You're an intelligence operative who happens to have advanced medical skills. Those skills will be your cover and your mission, but you'll also be gathering information and sometimes taking direct action to protect targets or neutralize threats." Maya learned to create and maintain false identities, to blend into different cultural environments, and to communicate with handlers through seemingly innocent channels. She practiced being a relief worker in simulated refugee camps, a traveling nurse in mock conflict zones, and a researcher in fabricated humanitarian missions. The psychological training intensified during Phase 3. Maya worked with counselors who helped her prepare for the moral complexities she would face in the field. "There may come a time when saving one life requires ending another," Dr. Torres explained during one of their sessions. "You need to understand how you'll make those decisions and how you'll live with the consequences." These conversations forced Maya to confront aspects of her future role that she had tried not to think about. She had joined the program to save lives, but she was learning that sometimes protecting innocent people required eliminating those who threatened them. "I became a medic to heal people," Maya said during one particularly difficult session. "How do I reconcile that with potentially having to kill people?" "By remembering that both actions serve the same purpose," Dr. Torres replied. "Protecting innocent life. The tools are different, but the mission is the same." As Phase 3 progressed, Maya received updates from home that made these philosophical discussions feel more concrete. Another series of bombings had struck her city, and this time her family's restaurant had been damaged. No one was hurt, but the incident brought the conflict uncomfortably close to the people she loved most. "I keep thinking about what you said before you left," Carlos wrote in his latest letter, "about learning to prevent violence instead of just responding to it. Every time something like this happens, I wonder if you're learning things that could have stopped it." Maya was indeed learning such things. Phase 3 training included instruction in threat assessment, intelligence analysis, and operational planning. She was discovering how seemingly small pieces of information could be combined to predict and prevent larger attacks. During one exercise, Maya and her fellow Phase 3 trainees were given fragments of intelligence about a planned attack on a medical facility. Working together, they were able to identify the target, predict the timing, and develop a response plan that would have saved dozens of lives. "This is what you'll be doing in the field," Agent Martinez explained after the exercise. "Sometimes you'll be providing medical care to victims after an attack. But sometimes you'll be gathering the intelligence that prevents the attack from happening at all." The final month of Phase 3 focused on mission preparation and psychological readiness. Maya learned about the specific regions where she might be deployed, the types of threats she would face, and the support networks that would be available to her. "Your first assignment will likely be in a location similar to your home environment," Jack Morrison told her during one of their regular check-in meetings. "Your background and language skills make you particularly valuable in Latin American operations." "What kind of operations?" Maya asked. "Humanitarian missions that serve dual purposes. You might be providing medical care in refugee camps while gathering intelligence about human trafficking networks, or working in disaster relief while monitoring terrorist organizations that exploit chaos for recruitment." Maya felt a mix of excitement and apprehension about her approaching deployment. After 18 months of training, she was ready to put her skills to use in real situations. But she also understood that leaving the controlled environment of the training facility meant entering a world where mistakes could have deadly consequences. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked, studying her face carefully. Maya thought about the bombing that had started this journey, about her sister Maria who had died for lack of proper medical care, about her family's restaurant, damaged by violence that seemed random but was part of larger patterns of conflict. "I'm ready," she said with confidence that came from months of pushing herself beyond what she had thought possible. "I'm ready to use what I've learned to actually make a difference." "Good," Jack replied, "because your first mission briefing is tomorrow. You're going home, Maya, but you're going home as someone very different from the person who left." That night, Maya packed her gear and prepared for a return to the world she had left 18 months earlier. She was no longer Maya Rodriguez, the restaurant owner who had stumbled into a bombing scene. She was now Maya Rodriguez, advanced combat medical specialist, ready to take on missions that could save countless lives by preventing conflicts before they escalated. She looked at the photograph of her family one last time before putting it carefully in her pack. Soon she would see them again, but she wondered if they would recognize the person she had become. Maya stepped off the commercial airliner in her home city, 18 months after leaving as a nervous restaurant owner. Now she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had been tested and proven capable. Her cover story was simple. She had been working with an international medical relief organization and was returning home for a brief visit before her next assignment. The airport looked exactly the same, but Maya saw it through different eyes. She automatically noted security cameras, exit routes, and potential threats in a way that would have been impossible before her training. The skills had become second nature, integrated into her awareness without conscious effort. Carlos was waiting for her at the arrival gate, and Maya felt her heart clench when she saw how much older he looked. The stress of living with constant uncertainty had aged him, just as her training had changed her. "Maya," he called out, rushing to embrace her. "You look different, stronger." "I feel different," Maya admitted as they hugged. "But I'm still your sister." During the drive home, Carlos filled her in on 18 months of family news. Their parents were well, but worried about the increasing violence in the region. The restaurant had been repaired and was doing better business than ever, partly because Maya's absence had become something of a local legend. "People come to eat where the woman who became a medic used to cook," Carlos explained with a mixture of pride and concern. "They ask about you constantly. I tell them you're helping people, but I don't really know what that means anymore." Maya looked out the window at familiar streets that now seemed simultaneously too small and too vulnerable. Her trained eye picked out defensive positions, escape routes, and areas where improvised explosive devices could be concealed. The knowledge was useful but also isolating. "Carlos, I need to tell you something," Maya said carefully. "I can't explain exactly what I do now, but I want you to know that everything I learned to help protect people like our family." "Are you in danger?" "Sometimes. but I'm very well trained to handle danger, and the work I do might help prevent the kind of violence that hurt our neighborhood while I was gone." That evening, the family gathered for another Sunday dinner, this time to welcome Maya home, but the celebration was subdued by the reality that her visit would be brief and her future deployment uncertain. "Mia," her father said quietly as they sat on the front porch after dinner, "you carry yourself like a soldier now. But when you look at your mother, I still see my little girl who wanted to heal the world." "Maybe those two things aren't so different," Maya replied. "Maybe sometimes you have to be a soldier to protect the healers." 3 days into her visit, Maya's real mission began. Jack Morrison contacted her through a coded message system they had practiced extensively during training. Her assignment was to investigate reports of weapons smuggling through the humanitarian aid network in her region. The intelligence suggested that terrorist organizations were using medical supply shipments to move explosives and weapons. Maya's cover would be perfect. She would volunteer with a legitimate medical relief organization while gathering intelligence about the smuggling operation. Her medical skills would allow her to contribute meaningfully to the humanitarian work, while her training would help her identify and track the illegal activities. "Your first real mission," Jack explained during a brief, carefully arranged meeting. "Everything you've learned will be tested, but you have all the skills necessary to succeed." Maya felt a familiar mix of nervousness and excitement. After 18 months of training scenarios, she was finally going to put her abilities to use in a real situation with actual consequences. The relief organization, Doctors Without Borders Regional, welcomed Maya enthusiastically. Her credentials were impeccable. Advanced medical training and local knowledge made her an ideal addition to their team. She was assigned to work in a clinic that served refugees from various conflicts in the region. During her first week, Maya threw herself into the medical work with genuine dedication. She treated malnutrition, infectious diseases, and trauma injuries with skills that amazed her new colleagues. But she also began the careful process of gathering intelligence about the supply chain irregularities that had triggered her mission. The breakthrough came during her second week, when Maya noticed that certain medical supply deliveries arrived with unusual security protocols. The drivers were nervous, the paperwork was overly complex, and some shipments were stored in areas restricted from most medical staff. Using techniques learned during Phase 3 training, Maya began documenting patterns in the suspicious deliveries. She photographed serial numbers, recorded arrival times, and tracked which personnel had access to the restricted storage areas. Maya called Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the clinic director, one afternoon. "Could you help us inventory the new shipment that arrived this morning? We need someone with your attention to detail." As Maya examined the supplies, she found what she was looking for. Hidden within legitimate medical equipment were components that could be used to manufacture improvised explosive devices. The discovery confirmed the intelligence reports and gave her specific information about how the smuggling network operated. But her investigation also revealed something more disturbing. The next major shipment was scheduled to arrive just days before a planned peace rally in the city center. The timing suggested that the smuggled materials would be used to attack the very people who were working for an end to regional conflicts. Maya faced the kind of decision her training had prepared her for, but hoped she would never have to make. She could gather more intelligence and wait for traditional law enforcement to act, but that might allow the attack to proceed. Or she could take direct action to prevent the shipment from reaching its destination, potentially saving dozens of lives but also risking exposure of her mission. That night, Maya sat in her childhood bedroom and thought about Maria, about the bombing victims she had helped 18 months ago, about all the innocent people who would suffer if she failed to act. She thought about her family sleeping peacefully in the same house, unaware that their safety might depend on decisions she would make in the next few hours. She made her choice with the clarity and confidence her training had given her. Using skills learned in Phase 3, Maya infiltrated the storage facility where the suspicious shipments were held. Working silently in the darkness, she identified and disabled the illegal components while leaving the legitimate medical supplies untouched. But as she prepared to leave, Maya heard voices approaching the storage area. 2 men were discussing plans for the peace rally attack, confirming that she had been right about the threat. They also mentioned other targets, other shipments, and a network larger than anyone had suspected. Maya activated the emergency communication protocol she had been taught, transmitting critical intelligence to her handlers while remaining hidden in the storage facility. The information she provided would allow authorities to intercept the broader network and prevent multiple planned attacks. When she finally made it back to her family's house just before dawn, Maya realized that she had truly become the person her training had prepared her to be. She was no longer just someone who responded to violence. She had become someone who could prevent it. The next morning brought news that shocked the entire region. Authorities had arrested a terrorist cell and seized weapons that were intended for attacks on civilian targets. The peace rally proceeded as planned, with thousands of people gathering safely to call for an end to regional conflicts. Maya watched the rally on television with her family, knowing that her actions had helped make it possible. Carlos noticed her quiet satisfaction and squeezed her hand. "You did something, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "You helped stop something bad from happening." Maya nodded, unable to explain the details but grateful that her brother understood the importance of her work. 2 days later, she received orders for her next deployment. As she prepared to leave her family again, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had left home as a woman who felt helpless in the face of violence. She was returning to the world as someone who could stand between innocent people and those who would harm them. "Will you come back?" her mother asked as Maya packed her bags. "I'll always come back," Maya promised, "but I'll also always leave again, because there are people out there who need the help I can provide." As her plane lifted off from the same airport where she had begun her training 18 months earlier, Maya looked down at the city lights below. Somewhere in those lights were her family, her neighbors, and thousands of other people who could sleep safely because of work they would never know about. Maya Rodriguez had found her calling. She was wounded in ways that came from confronting the world's darkness, but she was no longer silent in the face of injustice. She had become exactly what she had always been meant to be, a healer who could also be a protector, someone who could save lives by preventing the violence that threatened them. The plane banked toward her next mission, and Maya felt ready for whatever challenges awaited her. She had learned to fight not for conquest or revenge, but for the most important cause of all, the protection of innocent life.